So people of the DCE universe, Ezra Miller's Flash debuted in Justice League, and we've known for many years now that he would be getting his own solo movie. But also, as you may know, that has been through a fairly, what I would like to say, development hell, with director after director leaving and the story going in limbo, with even Ezra Miller having a go himself at writing the script alongside Grant Morrison, who strived for a more darker approach. But, either way, here we are today, because it's now been announced, which you may or may not have heard. It's literally, this happened last night, I believe, from when I'm making this video. The story of the Flash solo movie that is being directed by Andre Muschietti, sorry if I butchered that name, saying that the movie will be a different version of Flashpoint than you're expecting. Now, this is fairly big news, and we're going to get into that in today's video. So before I go on with this, guys, if you do go on to enjoy this video, go ahead and like it. But more importantly, I need to know your thoughts on this down in the comments below, because there's a lot we can talk about. Now, this isn't the first time the Flash solo movie was going to surround a Flashpoint adaptation. I believe back in 2017 it was being described as such, but along the years it's changed its narrative a bit. But now, with the recent news of the release date finally being unveiled as July 1st, 2022, which it was meant to come out this year. I mean, literally, this movie has been like literally around the block 50 billion times. But now finally, July 1st, 2022, and with this, it now looks like the Flashpoint story is back on the table. However, not the one, as the director said, we're expecting. Now, I'm sure most of you who are watching this are aware of the Flashpoint story, whether you've read it yourself, watched the DC animation, or seen the CW's adaptation, if you even want to call it that. But for those who haven't, Flashpoint focuses on Barry Allen traveling back in time to save his mother, but as a result of this, it changed the timeline as we knew it, with major ripple effects. Example or two would be like Thomas Wayne Batman, Martha Wayne Joker. There was also Themyscira at war with the Atlanteans, among many other things. And of course, Reverse Flash was also involved, but more about him a bit later in this video, because yeah, I've got quite a bit to say about that. But why are they going for Flashpoint now? That's the more bigger question, as the first movie of Ezra Miller's Flash. And what does the director mean by different than you're expecting? So with this movie now surrounding Flashpoint, and that's pretty much official now, I guess. Time travel is a given. Like that you just can't not do that with Flashpoint. However, one of the biggest focal outcomes of Flashpoint was to fix and retcon and just more or less do a soft reboot of a lot of aspects of the DC continuity. And I'm sure we're all aware how the DCEU has had a fairly bumpy road along that route. I mean, granted, they're making good solo films nowadays. I mean, each to their own, but I think I can safely say on the majority of fans in the DCU, it is better than what it was before. But okay, we're not getting into that. But let's just say they're making fairly solid films now, but the fact still remains that the building blocks have changed, with Affleck no longer being the Batman and other odd bits and pieces. Now, Ezra Miller's Flashpoint movie could be used to explain and try to fix as to why the DCEU isn't as connected as it was back in the Snyder days, and now try to merge the good run of films they've had in recent years. So moving forward, I guess it could be both successful and connected. And they could even try and implement Robert Pattinson's Batman into the DCEU. Now, hold on a second. Even though Matt Reeves The Batman was shaping up to be something fairly separate and isolated from the DCEU, without throwing that in the audience's faces, it still could connect, even though The Batman will still be a solo film, which will also, regardless of the outcome of if they try to connect it or not with Flashpoint, will likely not involve or attempt to throw any connectivity in there. And I know what you're going to say, probably, or at least some of you. Why would Ben Affleck's Batman in the DCU moving forward past Flashpoint now look like Robert Pattinson? Well, that would be the point of this first Flash movie, Flashpoint story. And characters such as Wonder Woman and Aquaman just wouldn't know any different. Like, for them, it would have been, Pattinson all along. Maybe the story of the Snyder era would be slightly altered. And to be honest, with Flashpoint being, as what I've already said, a soft reboot, and that is what the outcome of it originally was, the possibilities are limitless here. And if, they develop something, given enough time, I'm sure they can think of something to connect all of this. And even though this leaves some kinks that are still yet to be explained, as the Batman's time setting is still up for debate, regardless though, the Batman, I'm pretty confident, will still feel separate when the movie comes out. However, that doesn't mean that they can't connect it through Flashpoint. Now, as for Pattinson's age, Pattinson's Batman, well, I guess the answer to that could just be Thomas and Martha Wayne had that good night in Wayne Manor, if you know what I mean, a decade later than they did, and thus making his Batman younger. So, I know that may sound so simplistic, but it could be done. They just decided to have baby Bruce a decade later. And as a result, that puts Robert Pattinson's Batman younger. And I don't know, what do you think? If they do put, the Batman in the DCEU, that would be one way to do it. I don't really see any other way, because people would still be like, well, how does he look different and why is he younger? But the thing is, when he says that this, first Flash movie being Flashpoint will be different from what we're expecting, I think this will mean a fairly streamlined take on Flashpoint. Now, this will likely mean perhaps things like the Atlantean and Themyscira War, which won't be seen. Would they even introduce Thomas Wayne Batman still with Jeffrey Dean Morgan? That would be really cool, but I just maybe not. I highly doubt there's going to be another Joker being Bruce Wayne's mother. That's the thing. We need to take into account when he says different from what we're expecting. Will those things even happen? So safe to say some things will be missing, but the core elements of the story being Barry going back in time, which I think would still be likely to save his mother, but then again, you could argue that might be changed as well. I know some of you may be like, they can't change that. That was like the reason as to why it happened in the first place. But you never know. If it's different from what we're expecting, maybe he travels back in time another way. And as a result, the baseline principle and outcome Warner Brothers want with this film changes the timeline forever, and thus softly reboots the DCEU into what Warner Brothers has been course correcting for quite some time already. And I think we can all agree here that no matter what, Flashpoint being the first Flash movie is likely only for one reason. In my mind, you can't just sit there and tell me that there won't be any changes in the DCEU, which Ezra Miller's Flash is a part of, after doing a Flashpoint story. Changes are indeed coming. Maybe they'll just have Barry discover time travel and it will be a Back to the Future kind of situation with the repercussions on the timeline Warner Brothers wants. Either way, I would love to hear your ideas as to how you think this will be different. But how do I feel about this? Well, I don't really know right now. I've already seen a lot of negative responses to this online already, with people saying if they're not going to do a straight up adaptation, then don't do it at all. And for me, I've been saying with the development hell of this movie that it's just kind of put me off it. Plus, I wasn't really majorly on board with Ezra Miller's Flash anyway. I don't hate him, by the way, at all, but I just don't really like him. I just feel like okay about him, and with the Flash being one of my favorite DC characters, that's not exactly how I want to feel about, the casting. So I've always just kind of felt, ever since all of this, a delay after delay and everything like that, I'd rather the DCU just keep making good films and concentrating on that, rather than the attempt at connectivity this is blatantly going to try and establish. As well, we all know, as what I've been over, Flashpoint is good for course correcting a timeline, and there's no doubt that is what this is going to be about. And I get what people are saying from the negative perspective, because with the director saying it will be different than what you're expecting, you're already going to upset some people, because at the end of the day, it's going to be different. But at the same time, it's also important to remember everything, I feel like, if not every single comic book movie, but 9 out of 10, I feel, are adaptations. They're not copy and paste. But I think people are still upset with the fact that, the scope of Flashpoint will probably be heavily downplayed compared to what it actually is in terms of a story. As we've already said, the amount that goes on with how the world is basically very, very screwed in that storyline as a result of Barry Allen's time travel, that would be quite a spectacle to see on screen. But as a result, it is just being kind of put down to the first Flash movie, which, so I totally get why people were like, okay, okay, great. It's just as far as what we know up until now with the way Matt Reeves is approaching the Batman and his creative control there, I just kind of rather that approach, which, as we've already been over, is a film about the Batman, which won't really try to put connective checkpoints in the movie to the DCEU films of the past. It's just kind of allowing Matt Reeves to focus on a good Batman story. So with Flash, I just kind of wanted a similar thing as what happened with Affleck, just kind of start again. But, you know, I totally get how people don't feel that way at the same time. And, you know, if it's good, it's good. And if I love it, I love it. That's great. We're just going to have to wait and see. But there is, you know, certain things I'm excited about. And that is with this Flashpoint movie and with however they're going to streamline it and how it's going to be different from what we're expecting. You know, no matter what, I guess, I mean, well, they better do this. Reverse Flash being introduced in it. And that is wow. Like, one thing that I just, you know, one of my favorite villains is the Reverse Flash, just like how the Flash is one of my favorite heroes. And to see Eobard Thawne in, I don't know, the DCEU is something that gets me very excited. So that is one of the main reasons I'm excited about this movie, to be honest. But with the past development of the Flash solo movie, it didn't necessarily look like we were going to get Eobard Thawne. But with Flashpoint, I just think, well, you'd have to say it's a safe bet to think we would. So I really hope we do. It would serve as a good introduction to him. And maybe however simple they make this Flashpoint story, with maybe just Barry messing around with his powers and he time traveled, it would just be a really cool Reverse Flash, kind of like, you know, Flash season 1 story where he runs into him and then he learns all about a whole bunch more about himself, the Speed Force, who Eobard Thawne is, and it could just follow that route. And to be honest, I would be up for that. But at the same time, as I've said before, I also get, as cool as that sounds to a person like me, I totally get the other half of the fence of people who are like, but if this movie is going to be called Flashpoint, why do that and not actually Flashpoint? So I would love to know your thoughts about this news down in the comments below, guys. How do you feel about the first Flash movie being Flashpoint seemingly now, and how it will be different from what fans are expecting? Do you think that this is an excuse to kind of softly reboot the DCEU? And when I say reboot, like, I just mean kind of retcon a few things, connect a few things. I definitely think, I don't really see how this isn't Warner Brothers trying to low-key do that. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure they would have saved Flashpoint for a future Flash film. But, you know, starting off as the first movie seems to be quite an obvious, you know, reason as to why they're doing it. But other than that, everyone, if you like this video, please go ahead and like it. Subscribe for more videos like this. Check out my past couple of videos appearing on the screen right now. And I would love to talk to more of you about this in my Discord server. But thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.